In the spring of 1946, the mood across the United States was one of cautious collective relief. The immense world-shaping shadow of World War II had finally lifted.
Yeah, there was this real sense of optimism. Economic activity was picking up, and the nation was looking toward, well, a more peaceful future.
But just as that light began to spread, a very different kind of darkness descended upon a pretty unique community straddling the state line, Texarkana.
That's right. It's not just one city, it's twin cities, one foot in Texas, one in Arkansas. And over a terrifying 10-week period, this hooded figure seemed to just materialize from the shadows.
Attacked 8 people, killed 5, left this huge psychological scar that you can still feel in the region today, really.
Absolutely indelible.
So today we're doing a deep dive into what history remembers as the Texarkana Moonlight Murders. And our mission really is to move past the folklore. Most people know this case, like through the lens of that 1976 horror film, The Town That Dreaded Sundown, right? It sort of cemented the killer in pop culture.
It really did. Made him larger than life, almost mythical.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we want to conduct a clear, historical, detailed analysis. We're going to lay out a precise timeline of those 4 canonical attacks, name the victims, and really dissect the specific and evolving modus operandi of the man press called the Phantom Killer.
And when you look at why this case is still so famous and so frustratingly unsolved, it's not just about the killer being smart or lucky. It was kind of a perfect storm of factors working against the investigation.
Like what specifically?
Well, think about the limitations back then. Pre-forensic era, basically. Crime scenes were so easily contaminated, trace evidence, they don't really know how to handle it properly, so a lot was just lost.
Okay.
Then you layer on this massive jurisdictional complexity. 2 states, 2 county sheriffs, state police from both Texas and Arkansas, eventually the FBI, all trying to work together.
A logistical nightmare, I bet.
Totally. And all this was happening against this backdrop of just intense public panic, fueled by really sensationalist media.
Right. Creating this feedback loop of fear and rumor that actually hurt the investigation, didn't it?
It actively worked against it. They needed methodical, rational work, and instead they got chaos. This wasn't like today with DNA and instant communication.
Yeah.
It was a 1940s manhunt trying to catch a killer who was, frankly, pretty modern and adaptable in his methods. The system just wasn't equipped.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the facts. 4 confirmed attacks, 10 weeks. And this story of a killer who seemed to be, well, learning and getting more violent each time.
The crimes unfolded with this.
Yeah.
Really chilling rhythm. When criminologists look at the pattern, you see 4 distinct, pretty organized attacks over about 2.5 months. And that frequency, especially the roughly 3-week gaps between the main incidents, that's often seen as a hallmark of an organized, compulsive serial offender.
Like a cooling off period.
Exactly. Time needed to kind of recover psychologically, maybe plan the next strike. And the way the violence progressed, the depravity from that first attack to the last, it paints this clear, terrifying picture of a predator growing in confidence fast.
And the key thing is, he didn't start with murder. He started with this really intense, calculated assault. Attack 1, February 22nd, 1946.
Right. This first one happened just after midnight. Secluded Lover's Lane, Bowie County, Texas side. The victims were Jimmy Hollis, 25, and Mary Jean LeRae, 19. Parked after a movie.
And the way he appeared, that immediately set the tone, didn't it?
It did. It established this unsettling persona. A tall man approaches, but his face is hidden. Not with a professional mask, but something crude, like a white cloth bag or burlap sack with rough eye holes cut out.
Right.
He's got a pistol, a flashlight, uses them instantly to take complete control.
And his approach was methodical, not just random violence.
Calculated, definitely not a simple robbery. His first words to Hollis were unnerving. "I don't want to kill you, fellow, so do what I say." Specific command.
Then he gets him out of the car, tells Hollis to take off his pants.
Right. And after Hollis does, the attacker doesn't shoot him. He hits him. Hard. Twice on the head with the gun itself.
Brutal force. Hollis got a fractured skull from that. Larry apparently said the sound. She thought the gun had gone off.
Yeah, loud, metallic. So he's comfortable with potentially lethal violence right away, but he's holding back the kill shot at this point.
Then he turns on Larry.
Yeah, hits her, tells her to run. When she tries, he catches her. And what follows is, well, it's horrifying. He sexually assaults her, but not conventionally, with the barrel of the gun.
That specific detail It speaks volumes, doesn't it,
Oh.
about the psychology?
Oh, absolutely. It signals this profound sadistic compulsion. It's way beyond just assault or robbery.
And they only survived because headlights. A car approached.
Pure chance. The lights spooked him and he just vanished into the darkness. Both survived, but the trauma, immense. Larry actually moved away to Oklahoma shortly after, just couldn't stay there.
Understandable.
But the fallout from this attack, it was the only time police got a direct eyewitness description. And that description immediately became a problem.
Because they couldn't agree on his race.
Exactly. He was tall, about 6 feet, wore the mask. But Larry believed he was a light-skinned African-American. Hollis insisted he was a tan white man. That contradiction.
In 1946, Texarkana, that must have sent the police down the wrong path.
Instantly. They jumped to the conclusion the couple knew him, were lying, maybe covering for him or protecting themselves from scandal. Precious early time was lost chasing that theory.
And while they were doing that, the killer was learning. Hollis apparently said something pretty chilling to the police that day.
He did. He predicted that their attacker, having been sort of frustrated this time, would escalate. That he'd kill the next couple he targeted.
Wow. And Hollis's terrible prediction came true almost exactly 1 month later, keeping that chilling rhythm, March 24th, 1946.
Yes. The bodies of Richard Griffin, 29, and Polly Ann Moore, 17, were found. In Griffin's Oldsmobile, another remote lover's lane, again in Bowie County, Texas.
And this time, it was murder. The escalation happened just like Hollis feared.
Immediate, violent escalation. No more warnings, no pistol whipping. Both were dead. MO was simpler, more lethal. Both shot once. Back the head.
What kind of gun?
Ballistics later showed it was a .32 caliber revolver. That became his primary weapon, it seems, for the next couple of attacks.
And even here, early on, there were signs he was manipulating the scene.
Yeah, there were. The crime scene showed bloodstains about 20 feet away from the car. That strongly suggested they were killed outside the vehicle, and then he moved their bodies back inside.
Why do that?
Hard to say for sure. Maybe trying to obscure how it happened. Maybe just staging it for some reason.
Yeah.
He did empty Griffin's pockets, but there wasn't much money. Robbery clearly wasn't the main motive. The killing was the point.
And this is where those 1940s investigative limitations really became just catastrophic for the case.
Devastating. Absolutely devastating. Heavy rain had fallen that morning, washed away potential footprints, tire tracks, anything like that. And then, crucially, the scene was just compromised. Badly. By, quote, incautious law enforcement officers, and worse, by a flood of curious onlookers just trampling all over the place.
Oh, man. Today, that scene would be locked down tight. Forensics everywhere. What specifically did they lose? What kind of evidence?
Everything, potentially. The killer's shoe prints, gone. Those could have linked scenes. Trace evidence, fibers, hair, maybe shell casings, though revolvers usually keep their casings. But critically, any clear tire tracks that might have identified a vehicle.
Which Max Tackett later thought was key, right? The car.
Exactly. That was Tackett's big theory. Without modern forensic protocols, without securing the scene, the physical evidence was just obliterated. The investigation hit a wall almost immediately.
Okay, so following that 3-week pattern again, he strikes on April 14th.
Yeah.
And this attack, this seems like the one that really pushed the town over the edge into full panic.
Oh, absolutely. This one was dramatically more brutal, more complex. The victims were teenagers, Paul Martin, 17, and Betty Jo Booker, 15.
Where did this happen?
In and around Spring Lake Park, still on the Texas side. And the MO showed this profound escalation. Martin was found first. Shot 4 times.
4 times. That's a huge jump from the single shot in the last attack.
A massive jump. And even more disturbing, Betty Jo Booker's body wasn't found with him. It was found nearly 2 miles away.
2 miles. So he abducted her from the initial scene, moved her.
That's what it suggests. He shot her twice. It means he spent significantly more time with them, risked moving a body over a considerable distance. That points to growing confidence, maybe a need for more control over the whole process.
And the forensics confirmed the link.
Yes.
And the increasing brutality.
Yes. Ballistics confirmed it was the same .32 caliber revolver used to kill Griffin and Moore. So same killer. But the analysis, the postmortem on Polly Ann Moore from the second attack and Betty Jo Booker here, it revealed they'd both been tortured and sexually assaulted before death.
So the sadistic sexual motivation was undeniable now.
Beyond any doubt. Solidified the profile. This was a serial killer driven by deep, violent, sadistic compulsions.
And he left something behind, a kind of psychological signature.
A chilling one. Betty Jo Booker was a talented musician. He left her saxophone, in its case, near her body.
Why? What did that signify?
It screams that this wasn't about gain or even just efficient killing.
Yeah.
Leaving her prized possession, it reinforces the motive as pure sadistic control. It's like a taunt, a message. I took her life, and here's this reminder of who she was.
Wow.
The randomness, the specific MO, the escalating depravity, leaving the saxophone, this was the attack that truly terrified Texarkana. It signaled this guy felt untouchable.
Okay, so for his final confirmed attack, he waits another 3 weeks, like clockwork. But this time, he changes things up completely, shows real adaptability.
Disturbing level of adaptability, yeah.
Yeah.
He altered his victimology and location entirely, and it seems like a direct, calculated response.
Response to what?
To the police. After the Martin Booker murders, police presence on Lovers Lanes became massive. Heavy patrols everywhere. The Phantom clearly realized his usual hunting grounds were too hot, too protected.
So he pivoted.
Completely. On the night of May 3rd, he targeted an older married couple, Virgil and Katie Starks, in their isolated farmhouse. And significantly, this was in Miller County, Arkansas. He crossed the state line.
Defying the Texas patrols. Smart, in a
Okay.
terrifying way.
Yeah.
Who was attacked first?
Virgil Starks, 37. He was just sitting in his living room chair. The killer shot him twice, right through the window. A calculated home invasion. Totally different from attacking parked cars.
And his wife, Katie.
Katie Starks, 36. She ran for the telephone, presumably to call for help, and the attacker shot her twice in the face, horrific injuries. But she showed incredible strength.
She survived.
She did. Managed to escape the house, get to a neighbor. She became the third survivor of the Phantom spree. But Virgil died, the fifth and final murder victim.
Now, this attack also had a confusing element. The weapon was different, wasn't it?
That's right. It initially threw investigators. The weapon used here was a .22 caliber pistol, not the .32 revolver from the previous two double homicides.
Why the change? Any theories?
Well, it forced investigators to rely more on circumstantial links. The timing, the nature of targeting a couple, similar tire tracks found nearby that matched earlier scenes. As for why? A few possibilities. Maybe he ditched the .32 after the high-profile Martin Booker killings, felt it was too hot. A .22 is smaller, maybe easier to conceal or dispose of. It's also a very common caliber, easier to get hold of quickly if he needed a replacement to stick to his 3-week schedule.
So despite the weapon change, they felt confident it was the same guy.
The timing, the victimology shift in response to police pressure, the tire tracks, it all pointed strongly enough for them to link it.
And after the Starks attack, he just vanished.
Completely. Left 5 dead, 3 wounded. But that whole pattern, the precise timing, the evolution from assault to double homicide to adaptable home invasion, it reveals this chilling signature. He wasn't just a mindless monster. He was a thinking, adaptable hunter. And that made him even more terrifying.
Okay, so this consistent, terrifying pattern, especially after the brutality against the teenagers, Paul Martin and Betty Jo Booker, that's what really set the public into a frenzy, right? This is where abstract fear becomes concrete terror of a specific predator.
Exactly. It transformed everything. Texarkana already had a bit of a rough reputation. A border town, maybe a bit callous to murder, as some sources put it. The first 2 attacks caused concern, sure. But the Martin and Booker murders, that established the pattern. Made the threat feel personal, random, imminent, especially if you were young.
And that phrase, a town that dreaded sundown, it wasn't just rhetoric, it was literal.
Absolutely literal. People stopped going out, businesses closed early, curfews were imposed, residents went from leaving doors unlocked, which was common then, to literally barricading themselves inside, nailing shutters closed, sleeping in shifts, watching the windows. The fear was incredibly tangible.
What about the economic impact? You mentioned people reacting strongly.
Oh, it was huge. Stores sold out of guns, ammo, locks, window shades, anything offering security. Locksmiths were overwhelmed. People were driving out of town at night just to sleep somewhere else. They felt safer.
And all that arming up, that created its own dangers, didn't it?
Incredibly dangerous. You had a whole population suddenly armed and terrified. That hypervigilance meant homeowners could become a threat to police, to neighbors, to anyone out after dark. Every shadow, every noise. It created this intense paranoia. The community turned inward, suspicious of everyone.
And the media. They weren't just reporting. They seemed to actively shape the narrative, creating the legend.
They absolutely played a role in creating the monster. It was the local paper, the Texarkana Gazette, that coined the name a Phantom Killer.
And that name stuck.
Instantly. And that act of naming was powerful. It took this unknown human attacker and turned him into something else, a folkloric entity, a boogeyman. The name itself carried immense psychological weight.
They also came up with Moonlight Murders.
Yeah, catchy name, but factually, not really accurate. Reporters loved how dramatic it sounded, but the crimes didn't actually line up with the moon phases consistently. Some nights were clear, some rainy. But accuracy wasn't the point, was it?
Sensationalism sells papers.
Exactly, and the Phantom sold papers like crazy. As the news went national, reporters flooded into Texarkana, turned this local tragedy into a national spectacle.
How did the national media amplify things?
Mostly by focusing on the ghoulish details, as they called them, really playing up the horror to boost circulation. True crime as entertainment was just starting to emerge as a genre, and this story had everything. The local paper even ran headlines calling him a sex maniac, which just fueled the moral panic around the attacks on young couples.
So the media wasn't just reporting fear, it was actively creating more of it.
Absolutely. Turning Texarkana into this dark focal point for America's anxieties about random violence, #TAG, the spread of hysteria and rumor.
And that fear, that hysteria, it wasn't just background noise. It actively harmed the investigation.
Completely clogged the works. It generated this overwhelming flood of false leads. People are so paranoid they started suspecting everyone, neighbors, friends, family, countless false sightings, tons of false confessions from people just seeking attention.
Accusations against innocent people, too.
Oh, yeah. An IRS agent got accused, various local eccentrics. Police were buried under this mountain of misinformation.
They must have wasted so much time chasing down dead ends.
Paralyzed by it, constantly having to dedicate resources just to dispel rumors, like the rumor that an arrest had been secretly made or that certain people were being held without charge. Every false lead burned vital time that should have gone into analyzing the scant physical evidence they actually had.
And there was that really tragic incident with a university student.
Heartbreaking. A young University of Arkansas student from a prominent local family. He took his own life shortly after the last attack. Left behind a poem. Seems like a confession.
The police had to investigate that thoroughly.
Had to. Dedicated significant resources only to determine it was completely false. But imagine the impact the public hears about it, thinks the case is solved, then the police have to publicly deny it. It just eroded trust further, deepened the mystery and the feeling that nobody knew what was going on.
So looking back, what's the legacy of that media-driven hysteria in 1946? How does it connect to, say, true crime today?
Texarkana basically wrote the playbook. The media didn't just report, they created a persona, turned the killer into this marketable figure of terror. That whole structure, sensationalized violence, the killer persona, the dramatic manhunt narrative, focusing on the horror over the victims that became the template for so much true crime content that followed.
For decades, yeah.
It's this early, powerful example of how media narrative and public hysteria can create this dangerous feedback loop, sometimes prioritizing drama over actual justice.
Okay, let's shift gears now. Away from the public panic, let's look at the actual investigation. The manhunt for the Phantom was, for its time, pretty massive.
Yeah.
Huge resources, multiple agencies involved.
One of the biggest the region had ever seen. You had local sheriffs Bill Presley in Bowie County, Texas, W.E. Davis in Miller County, Arkansas, especially handling that crucial Starks case.
Right.
Then state police from both sides. And eventually the FBI got involved, too. A real multi-agency task force.
But the key breakthrough, the one piece of real insight, came from the state level, didn't it?
It did. Arkansas State Police Trooper Max Tockett. He was the one who spotted the crucial pattern nobody else seemed to connect initially.
Which was?
The stolen cars. Tockett noticed that near each murder scene, a car was reported stolen shortly before and then found abandoned nearby afterwards. He theorized the killer was using stolen cars for transport to avoid his own vehicle being seen.
Smart. That gave them something concrete to look for.
It was the single most actionable lead in the whole case. It suggested a specific criminal methodology.
Okay, and then the big guns arrived. The Texas Rangers. Enter Lone Wolf Gonzalez.
Right. As the panic peaked, Captain M.T. Lone Wolf Gonzalez took over command. He was a legend already. Famous Texas Ranger, supposedly an expert in ballistics, fingerprints, emerging forensic science for the time.
So he became the face of the investigation.
Immediately, holding press conferences, commanding the task force. His involvement brought in the FBI, raised the national profile, supposedly guaranteed maximum resources.
So on paper, it sounds impressive. Gonzales, Rangers, FBI, state police, local sheriffs, a central command post. Why didn't it work? Why did the trail go cold?
Because underneath that impressive structure, the whole effort was constantly being undermined by procedural flaws, by the limitations of the era, by human factors too. The manpower was there, but it was often rendered ineffective. Hashtag investigative missteps and limitations.
Let's talk about forensics again. Gonzales was an expert, but you said the application was the problem.
Exactly. They knew about ballistics comparison, about fingerprints, but applying it consistently effectively, that was the issue. Remember the Griffin Moore scene? Contaminated beyond belief.
Right, the rain, the onlookers.
Wiped out footprints, trace evidence. Any chance of linking physical evidence from that scene to later ones or to a suspect was pretty much gone. There weren't standardized evidence kits, no set procedures for handling bodies or cars. Everything depended on the individual officer's training, which varied wildly.
And as the leads dried up, they got desperate.
Desperate is putting it mildly. They tried some really unconventional, frankly dangerous tactics. Officers patrolling lovers' lanes in disguise, sometimes even in drag, hoping to bait the killer.
Okay.
But the most questionable thing, using teenage decoys?
Wait, teenage decoys? Like kids?
Yeah. They actually recruited teenage volunteers to sit in parked cars in known hotspots. The idea was to lure the Phantom into an ambush, with officers hidden nearby.
Using kids as bait for a serial killer. That just shows how helpless they felt.
It speaks volumes about their desperation. They clearly thought he had this fixed pattern they could exploit. Luckily, the tactic didn't work. He never took the bait. But imagine the risk. Gonzales himself basically told citizens to arm themselves and shoot first, admitting law enforcement couldn't protect them.
And what about the jurisdictional friction? Texas, Arkansas, 2 counties.
An absolute nightmare, even with the task force. Crossing state lines complicates everything. Separate warrants needed. Evidence handled under 2 different sets of laws. 4 different law enforcement cultures trying to mesh under intense media pressure. It definitely slowed things down, caused friction.
And Gonzales himself, the lone wolf. He brought resources, but was he also part of the problem?
He was a complex figure. His fame brought attention, which was good in a way, but critics felt he was often more focused on managing the media, on his own image, than on quiet, methodical police work. A showman, some called him.
And that incident at the Starks crime scene really highlights that, doesn't it?
It's notorious. Gonzales shows up with a Life magazine reporter and photographer. They're taking flash photos right at the scene for a photo op.
Intimidating evidence for PR.
Pretty much. It wasn't about collecting evidence, it was about the story. It even caused a false alarm because local police saw the activity and thought the killer had been caught. So while Gonzales was candid in press conferences about the lack of progress, that candor also broadcast their impotence to the public and, crucially, to the killer himself.
Letting him know what they didn't know.
Exactly, allowing him to stay one step ahead. His celebrity was, in many ways, a major distraction from the actual work needed.
Okay, so despite all these hurdles, the bad forensics, the jurisdiction issues, the media chaos, even the leadership problems, a massive investigation did eventually narrow down onto one person.
Right. After questioning hundreds, they really focused on one prime suspect, and the fact they couldn't convict him. That's the core reason the case is still officially unsolved.
Who was he?
His name was Yul Swinney. He was 29 at the time. A known quantity to law enforcement, a career criminal. Extensive record for things like car theft, counterfeiting, burglary, assault.
A violent history, then.
Yes, but notably no known record of sexual assault before this, which made him a slightly complicated fit for the profile given the evidence of sexual sadism in the attacks, but not impossible.
So how did they land on him? What was the link?
It came back to Trooper Max Tackett's insight about the stolen cars.
The cars again?
Exactly. Tackett's theory led investigators to look closely at known prolific car thieves in the area, and Yul Swinney was definitely on that list. They found physical evidence linking him to the stolen car racket operating around the time of the murders. That put him firmly on their radar.
Okay, so the MO linked him. But what elevated him from just a suspect to the prime suspect?
The most damning evidence didn't come from fingerprints or ballistics. Most of that was gone or unusable. It came from his wife, Peggy Swinney.
His wife talked.
She did. Gave police incredibly detailed statements. She explicitly implicated Ewell in the Martin and Booker murders, the third most brutal attack.
What did she say?
She described being with him that night, said he left her in the car near Spring Lake Park, went off on his own, she heard gunshots, he came back later, covered in mud, carrying something. Something police strongly believed, based on her description, was Betty Jo Booker's saxophone case.
Wow, that's specific. Did she lead them to anything else?
She apparently even tried to guide police to a spot where she thought he might have tossed the murder weapon, although it was never found. Her testimony was the linchpin. It seemed to fill in all the gaps left by the lack of physical evidence.
Okay, so prime suspect identified, linked to the MO via the stolen cars, and a detailed confession from his own wife implicating him in the specific murders. Why wasn't he charged? Why is this still unsolved?
It all fell apart. A legal collapse based entirely on the legal technicalities of the time. The evidence, apart from Peggy's testimony, was purely circumstantial.
And her testimony was the problem.
The issue was spousal testimonial privilege as it existed in Texas and Arkansas back then.
Okay, break that down. What does that mean?
Basically, in that era, the law often prevented one spouse from being forced to testify against the other about things said or done during the marriage. The idea was to protect marital harmony, even over criminal prosecution in some cases.
So even though Peggy was willing to talk and gave all this detail, the defense could block her testimony.
That's exactly what happened. Her testimony was challenged as legally inadmissible under spousal privilege. On top of that, her own credibility was attacked. She had her own past issues, and she could be painted as an accessory after the fact.
So without her testimony being allowed in court,
The prosecution's case crumbled. Without the physical evidence to back it up independently, the fingerprints, the casings, any DNA, which wasn't even a concept, then the circumstantial case just wasn't strong enough to guarantee a conviction against a determined defense. They couldn't risk taking a murder charge to trial based only on circumstantial evidence, and a testimony they knew would be thrown out or heavily challenged.
so Swinney was never tried for the murders. Did he face any consequences?
He did serve significant time, decades actually. But for other charges, car theft, assault, things they could prove without Peggy's testimony, but not for the 5 murders.
And that failure to prosecute him for the murders,
Mm-hmm.
that's why the case remains open.
That's the absolute core reason. The collapse of the legal case against Ewell Swinney meant the biggest manhunt in the region's history just fizzled out legally. Swinney was eventually released from prison years later in poor health and died a free man. His escape from murder charges cemented the Phantom's enduring mystery.
So let's just recap this journey. We've traced this timeline of escalating violence from that initial mask assault through the methodical double killings of couples in lovers' lanes to that final, adaptable, terrifying home invasion.
Yeah, showing a killer who was clearly evolving, thinking, reacting to police pressure. A predator learning on the job, essentially.
And we saw how the fear he created wasn't just about the acts themselves, but was amplified by the media, turning him into this larger-than-life figure.
Right. While the massive investigation trying to catch him was constantly tripping over itself, bad scene management, jurisdictional chaos, and ultimately that critical legal failure with the prime suspect's wife's testimony.
And it's that lack of resolution, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what gives a killer like this
Yeah.
immortality in a dark way.
Absolutely. If a killer is caught, convicted, punished, the case closes, the community gets some form of closure, maybe starts to heal. But when a known killer evades a huge manhunt and then just disappears back into the world, the facts curdle into folklore, grim local folklore.
That lack of an ending is what made the Phantom the immortal American boogeyman. His legend outlived him because justice, in the end, failed.
Precisely. The fact he was never definitively brought to justice for those murders allowed his story to take on a life of its own, influencing how we view serial crime even today. And maybe the final thought for you, the listener, is this. What does the Texarkana case teach us about that dangerous dynamic when media hype, public panic, and even investigative ego start to overwhelm methodical police procedure? Often it seems the truth and justice itself are the first things to vanish.